Employee of the Year, and yet she had never seen her product. And when she witnessed a 13-week-old baby boy fight for his life and lose it, she had exactly what that abortion doctor in Florida had. She had a meltdown. And she looked out the window and she saw 3 of our young female volunteers out praying during their time slot. And she knew God was calling her to get out of there. And she walked into my office on October 5th, and she resigned on October 6th of 2009. Many of you know her story through this event, if you've been able to see her speak, or you read her book, Unplanned. And it is a beautiful story of the heart. Because knowing Abby all of those years now, we're friends and our kids play together. One time my 6-year-old daughter asked Abby, "How do you know my dad?" And Abby said, "It's complicated." And yet, we see the joy that has come from so many of these former Planned Parenthood workers. And we have certainly seen that in 40 Days for Life, when in Storm Lake, Iowa, somebody applied to bring 40 Days for Life to Storm Lake. And we didn't think anything of it. We had never had a campaign in Storm Lake, Iowa, and so we approved the application, and this wonderful woman went through the training. And then we learned that it was Sue Thayer, the former director of that Planned Parenthood. And we were introduced to Sue and her beautiful story of how her facility was to be the first one to roll out telemed abortions, where the RE486 abortion is administered without a doctor on site. Iowa has been chosen to roll out this drastic step to a brave new world in America. And Sue at that point said, I just can't do this anymore. And she refused to do it. And they fired her. And she spent a lot of time reflecting and praying and realizing the evil that she had participated in for so many years. And she was sitting one day asking God what she should do and move on with her life. Storm Lake is small. Everybody knew she was the director there. And she remembered that in her meetings, the one thing that Planned Parenthood really did not like was 40 Days for Life. So she decided to lead the 40 Days for Life in her community. And after a campaign, she got the wonderful news that her former facility, her former workplace, was closing. And we flew out here. She invited us to speak at this celebration event in Storm Lake, the first time I ever realized that it could snow in March. And I talked to Sue on the phone, and she's just the sweetest human being you'll ever meet. She treats you like family. And I said, I wonder if she's going to be the same in person. And we got out of our rental car, and she just ran up and gave us a huge hug. And since then, Sue has come to Texas, and we've worked on a number of things with her, as she has done so much in the great state of Iowa and Wisconsin and other places to speak out against telemed abortions. How God uses these former workers is huge. And I know she's speaking at the Clarity Clinic banquet in October, next fall. If you have the chance to hear her, her testimony is beautiful. And yet she lost friends, she lost financial security to do what she knew was right. That's why it's not a cliche to say that this is about hearts and minds. It really is about hearts and minds. The pro-life movement's not made up of self-righteous Christians trying to force our religion down people's throat. Quite the opposite. It's made up of sinners. It's a movement of converts. It's a movement led by the women who have had abortions and are now, I believe, the most powerful voice in our movement. It had a profound impact on me the first time I heard 5 post-abortive women share their testimonies. It's led by former workers. It's led by doctors who have done abortions. dads who have paid for abortions, grandparents who have said nothing about abortion. That's what our movement is made up of. It's a movement of converts, and the statistics show it only goes in one direction. When somebody is wrong on this issue, they are never explaining it, saying that they've been pro-life their entire life and now they need to support abortion rights. It only swings in one direction because no matter how we word it, no matter how we phrase it, no matter what money we pour into marketing campaigns, abortion kills an innocent human being. And how we wish we were wrong on that point. That's why Abby Johnson walked out of that facility. That's why Sue Thayer had to come to terms with the reality of what she was participating in. Because abortion is simply unsuccessful if the baby survives. And that's why we're here tonight. That's why Dubuque County Right to Life is so crucial, because ultimately this is a campaign for hearts and minds, and the first step to that is prayer, and the second step to that is education. And that's exactly what they're doing, and that's the point that Gary made in that wonderful video. If he had seen those posters, he didn't say if we'd have seen that, we would have never had an abortion. He said maybe they would have, maybe they wouldn't have, but they would have had the opportunity. And Dubuque County Right to Life gives an abortion-minded woman or boyfriend or parent or peer that opportunity to turn around at the very last moment or say something to a coworker. Because that's how lives are saved. That's what motivates people to overcome that natural fear of going out and pray at the Planned Parenthood here in Dubuque. In the 40 Days for Life campaign, hopefully, Marion said we're not having a 40 Days for Life campaign because they're going to be closed this summer, which is a great attitude. And in order for that to happen, many of you need to sign up and to go out. I know through my travels, I've been to so many cities the last 3 months, you are dying for warm weather. And when you participate in going out and praying at Planned Parenthood, you get to go outside. And it's going to be enjoyable. We can't go outside in the summer where I live in Houston. This is the time to do that. And if 40 Days for Life does happen in the fall, this is the moment in our nation's history to step out of our comfort zone and to go out there and participate in the prayerful, peaceful vigil. If we run out the door and try to save the world, we're going to last about 5 minutes, especially on the epitome of the front lines. But if we go out there and we pray and we see that God is there being that last hope for the baby and certainly that first sign of mercy for the mom if they do go through with the chemical abortion, that we are there, particularly as a public and prayerful stance against telemed abortions, which are trying to spread throughout the rest of the country. And thankfully, Sue and so many others have spoken out strongly against that because of how dangerous and how evil it is. And you, in the midst of all of the many obligations that we have, family, church, jobs, careers, travel, whatever it is, we're so busy now, despite all of our gadgets, it means even more when you carve 30 minutes or an hour and go out there and pray. It makes a tremendous difference. It's a sacrifice, and yet it's one that matters. One thing that Abby Johnson told me when she left was that Planned Parenthood, with their directors, shared with them that when people are out in front of one of their facilities, the no-show rate goes up to as much as 75%. And they shared that with their directors. To put it in another way, you don't want these crazy people out there. It will hurt your business, which is exactly why Sue Thayer decided to lead a 40 Days for Life campaign when she left. Because it matters, and it puts God and prayer at the center so that we can go out there, get out of the way, and watch him work miracles, and indeed he does. And just last year, 2013, in the United States, we saw a record 87 abortion facilities close their doors, the most in any year since Roe v. Wade. We've seen new Right to Life chapters. I mentioned the pregnancy resource centers that now outnumber abortion providers 3-1 in America. This is adding up, but it's not coming from Washington, D.C. And thank God we live in a country where we do not have the luxury to wait on our government to correct a moral crisis that goes on in our own backyard. But we do have the joy and the privilege and the opportunity as Americans to do something for the men and women that are considering abortion today or next week or the week after. We can reach them through education. And that's what Dubuque County Right to Life does, and that's ultimately what will end abortion in our nation. Because abortion will end. John Adams tells us this democracy was made for a religious people. Any other kind, and it is sure to fail. That should give us a lot of hope, real hope. We don't have to throw our hands up in the air and sit out. That's not what we do as Americans. It is certainly not what we do as Christians. Viktor Frankl, in his classic book, Man's Search for Meaning, talks about how the survivors of Auschwitz made it through the atrocities of a concentration camp. He was a psychiatrist who lived through the Holocaust. He lived in Auschwitz. And afterwards, he wrote this small book. It's 150 pages, and it's basically just a brain dump. It was supposed to be a brain dump of his experiences, of what he witnessed. But it became the most widely read religious book of the last century. And at the end, he talks about how people made it through, because towards the end of the war in Auschwitz, suicide became a big problem. Because the prisoners found out that their family had been murdered and that they were going back to nothing even if they survived their daily life in the concentration camp. So they got deeply depressed and began taking their own lives. And Viktor Frankl says the ones that didn't were only able to do so because they saw their suffering in the context of history, and that no one else could replace the role that God had put them in that exact moment in history. A man who becomes conscious of his responsibility to another human being will never throw away his life. He knows his why and therefore can bear any how. That really speaks to us today in an American culture that thrives on meaninglessness, that has no purpose, and that welcomes chaos. Because when we see that we are made in the image and likeness of God, when we realize that there is meaning and that there is purpose, we can endure anything and everything. And that's what we have to do for our time in history, because abortion does not come to us with Nazis and with tanks and with concentration camps. It doesn't operate that way. It comes to us through our moral relativism and an irrational tolerance that says we can do whatever we want to whomever we want if we so will it. It is a dangerous mentality, but it is one that is overcome with truth and with love and with witness. No one argues with a saint because their lives speak volumes. And that's what we have to do. We have to practice what we preach, and we have to live and educate, and that's what changes hearts and minds. That's why Guttmacher just reported that the national abortion rate is dropping drastically. And that gives us a lot of hope at the local level, because abortions do not happen on the bench of the Supreme Court. They do not happen in the White House, and they do not happen in the halls of Congress. They happen in a very normal neighborhood not too far from here. And so it becomes our problem, but one that we do not fear, because our Lord, on his worst day, when all hope seemed lost, he converted a criminal. He converted a criminal and opened the gates of eternity to a man who was condemned to die. And I know throughout the year, you are asked for so much, and you're asked certainly to pray throughout the year, but tonight, in a moment, they will ask you for your financial support, and I encourage you to give generously. Give a one-time gift, give a monthly gift, so that Marion and her staff don't have to worry about fundraising throughout the rest of the year, but they can focus on their mission of closing Planned Parenthood. So I encourage you to make a monthly commitment later. And if you are already a monthly donor, tonight's the night to go up $5, $10, $15 a month, and certainly give a one-time gift, as these generous 28 people allowed this event to happen so that all the money goes to their mission. It goes directly to that, because abortion will end. It will end in America, but we have to have faith now more than ever to trust those beautiful words of St. Paul when he tells us, "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we shall reap a harvest if we do not lose heart." God bless you. Keep up the great work, and thank you for welcoming back to the
Thank you, everyone. He's done some impressive things, and so can we. Thank you for sharing so much and for encouraging us to carry on. Our display tables in the back and in the front have Sean's book for sale, 40 Days for Life. It's $10. Now, I suggest you pick up your book tonight, because we also sell it at our office for $20. And maybe he'll sign a few copies. He will be staying for a while tonight, so take a chance to ask him to sign your $10 book. On your tables, you will also find some little gifts for you. There should be a bumper magnet in every place setting. Please take it home. Put 1 or 2 or 3 on your cars. See if you can get more stickers than Bill Fry has on his. And without a word, you can tell the world that life is. You will also find an Amazon Smile information card. Those of you that shop on Amazon, you can give to Dubuque County Right to Life with 1 extra click and no more money. So it's a painless way to give to your organization. And again, as Liz had mentioned, you have the programs at your place setting, and on the back of it is the year in review. So many events, so many activities that you have in this organization. It's a busy place. Each one listed has only one little line, but so much behind it. This year alone, we created 2 new educational programs. Something amazing is happening here. Take all this information home with you, speak volumes with the bumper magnets, share money without spending any more, and be proud of all that this organization does. And as you know, the purpose of this dinner is double-fold. First, to bring our pro-life family together. Thank you for coming. And secondly, to ask you to be financial supporters